anyway, I had to go to county lockup, 30 days, and I got out. And my friends, like any good military friend should do, said, "You want to like pay rent or get food? No, let's throw a party and invite whores and have a gangbang."
All right, welcome back to Four for the Road, everybody. This is No Shame. I'm sitting here with Chris and Road Dirt, and today we're going to be talking about a pretty serious topic and something that I'm sure a lot of people deal with, but it might not be something that people always feel comfortable talking about, and that's really the motivation for having this discussion in the first place. And what we're going to be talking about is mental health, and specifically as it pertains to being able to talk about mental health and dealing with mental health while you're in a motorcycle club. So, it's just going to be a pretty open discussion. We got, for some background, you got all three of us that are on this podcast right now. We've all served in the military, have that background and experience. So, that's a place where you kind of deal with mental health struggles in a more prevalent way, I think, than in normal society. And then kind of transitioning into this into the motorcycle club world, you see it a lot, but there's still a lot of that stigma. So something we kind of just want to get out there, talk about openly, and hopefully make it part of the culture to just be able to talk about your struggles and to be able to address these things without feeling like somebody's going to look at you some kind of way.
Yeah, so I can kind of lead into this. This is kind of stuff I'm comfortable talking about, which is the whole topic of today, right? People aren't comfortable talking about it, but I started early on learning to kind of peel back those emotions and feelings and share them with other grown men, which is not normal for us to do because, we're taught to suck it up. Men don't cry, men don't have emotions, men don't show emotions. But, like 25 years ago, I decided to try and get sober, and I started going to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings because, my quality of life just went to garbage. I'm not going to get into that. That's not what today's discussion is about. But I show up into a room full of alcoholics, where you stand up there and you say, "Hey, I'm Chris, I'm alcoholic," and all that shit. And I felt uncomfortable. Well, there was this old man in there, and this is what helped me was, this guy was a Green Beret, and he had already retired. So he was, at this point, you think 25 years ago, he was already retired from the military. He was a retired Green Beret from Vietnam. And he would get up when there was women in the room. He would say, "Sissies don't get sober." But when it was just the dudes around, he would say, "Pussies don't get sober." And he'd say, pussies drag on their bullshit and live in their bullshit and make everybody else around them miserable. And he would say things like that. But then he would talk about how he got sober. His name was Bill McShay. And he got shot in Vietnam like multiple times. I don't know how many times he got shot. He got left for dead. And he'd tell his story, and so it kind of made all us tough guys more comfortable to share because we're like, if this tough guy can do it. But he had gotten shot up in Vietnam and he got left for dead, and his team had to break contact, and he was laying there and he couldn't move, and and the enemy was crossing over and they were breaking contact and leaving him. And he said, "I know my guys are going to come and get me." So he just laid there and played dead. And when things calmed down, he crawled into a hollow tree, and he stayed in that hollow tree for several days. And he said he'd lay in there all day long and smoke cigarettes. And at night he would crawl out to the river and he'd drink water like a dog because that's the only way, he could just get his face down by the water, and he'd drink water, and then he'd crawl back to his tree. And he said, "I know my guys are going to come and get me." And they came and got him, and so he would say, "Pussies don't get sober." And I was like, man, I said, if this badass can like come in here and share his emotions about how hard it is to not drink when you have problems and talk about his issues with other grown men, I guess I can too, It gave me some peace of mind in my life at that point, and I kind of brought that along with me with the mental health thing, but it was still hard. But I'm going to show how it correlates. It was still hard for me because, I did 20 years in the Army, and you didn't talk about, when you're stressed. You never said you wanted to commit suicide. Well, you never say, if you say like suicide, homicide, those are the two things that will get you in trouble. You'll start losing clearances, and you'll start losing and getting into major issues, losing your job. But you wouldn't, even back then, you wouldn't say I'm stressed. You wouldn't say I can't sleep. You wouldn't say I'm having nightmares. You didn't talk about it because you were afraid, A, everybody would shun you and make fun of you and call you a pussy. And two, you're afraid that they would say you're crazy and they would take your clearance and you wouldn't be able to do your missions anymore. At least that's how I felt in the circles I ran in. So you just didn't talk about it much. And when I came time to retire around 2009, I said, all right, I'm going to start coming out and talk about all the mental health issues I've been experiencing for the last 5 years or more, because they've gotten really bad. Like the whole PTSD thing, the uncontrollable fits of rage, the nightmares, the anxiety, everything, you name it, I was dealing with it. And I told my unit psych about it. And she was like, hey, look, I'm a operational psychologist, that, but I'm going to get you in touch with some people that can help you. And, I started pursuing help. And I started finding out at that point that, there were a whole lot of people that are dealing with this stuff, but they weren't talking about it. And that early on, that was a joke, that you wouldn't talk about it. And it's like, when you're having road rage, you'd say, man, if people only knew what I was going through my head, they wouldn't honk the horn at us, and we'd laugh about it and stuff. And we built trust amongst each other. But, so back up a little, back through my sobriety, getting sober, some of the guys I got sober with, I was at Fort Bragg. So all the units are at Fort Bragg. I had a lot of friends from the different units. So once again, it was some of the baddest dudes that the military has to offer were in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, bearing their souls and getting sober. And then as I started working through mental health issues later on, I experienced the same thing. There was some malingers and some bullshitters and some people just trying to get a VA claim or whatever, that we all see them, and they're full of shit. But then there were the real dudes who, like, quality of life had gone to pieces, and they were just miserable. They had no quality of life, borderline suicidal, all the things we deal with. And there were guys in there from those types of units. And as we move forward, now, if you look, we're starting to see in the military, because I still work around the military and I stay in touch with a lot of people. They're starting to become more open and figure out how to deal with this stuff, because all the suicide, the veteran suicides. And it's not just affecting, it's affecting the special operations community and everybody else. So once again, when you have these guys step up and say, look, I'm a Green Beret or I'm a Delta Force operator and I dealt with depression and anxiety, it made it a lot easier for these service members to step up. So now fast forward to today, that was just kind of like laying it out where I'm coming from. So within the community, I see the same thing. It's like we're behind the times as far as where the veterans community is catching up with a little. To even veterans in the motorcycle club community, when you talk about mental health, it's like people start clamming up. It's like it's a dirty word. There's a stigma with it still, it's a weakness. I threw it in a group the other day. We were chatting with a bunch of vets from that I talked to that are in the community. And I said, hey man, one of my friends I just recently lost two veteran guys that were in my unit, and they were gone. I mean, they killed themselves. This has happened in the last few weeks or last month. And I was feeling like really dark, and it hit me hard because I knew them, and it hit me hard and harder than all the suicides in the past that hit me, that I've dealt with, and the deaths. So I was feeling down, and I just reached out to some guys. I'm like, hey bros, suicide's real. Keep your head on a swivel, look out for each other. And I got comments back that were kind of like, oh yeah, man, I'm not, that's not an issue. Almost like if everybody wanted to hurry and quickly say, well, I would never kill myself because I'm not a pussy, And I'm like, wow. And it really blew my mind that people I know that are in the motorcycle club community and are veterans still kind of have that stigma that suicide means you're a pussy, and that mental health means you're weak. And the sad thing about this is that there's nothing farther from the truth than that. I mean, like I said, for me, if I sit over here and wallow in my garbage and I let my mental health continue to deteriorate, I'm a pain in the ass to my brothers. I'm a pain in the ass to my wife. I'm not a good father. But people just can't see that, and meanwhile, they can't see that. People continue to suffer and end up killing themselves, or either that or self-medicating with booze and drugs, which is just, we all know what that leads to. It's nothing really good. I'm not talking about just partying and having a drink, or I'm talking about the people who truly self-medicate and just keep themselves in a stupor all the time to avoid dealing with their mental health issues. So that being said, I don't know. I try to always put it in the light, talk to people, and try and encourage people to reach out. I try to encourage people to seek help, because it's not a sign of weakness. I mean, I've spent my military career around some of the baddest, toughest fools that you could ever imagine, and they deal with the same stuff too. And they go and get help for it because they're tough and they're hard and they're strong, and they're not just sitting there letting something whip their ass. They step up and seek help. But I just wish I could get, because maybe that's what we're doing here. You know, I'd really like to see the message get out to our community that, you know, hell, a lot of people suffer with mental health issues, especially the veteran the veteran population, but also just humans in general, and in the biker set. And then, you know, I just like for people to understand that it's not a sign of weakness, that it's actually a sign of strength, and also to look out for one another, because, you know, I've had brothers tell me one time when I was trying to talk to a brother about suicide, and he goes, fuck it, if somebody feels like killing themselves, tell me, I'll help them do the job. And I was like, it blew my mind. And later we had a conversation about it, but I was pretty pissed. But, you know, that kind of stuff blows my mind. And I just wonder how we can help people understand that's really not the right approach. So yeah, that's all I got.
Well, you know, it's kind of crazy that you know, you bring that up. You know, that one person's mindset towards somebody, you know, who's that much in distress that they want to kill themselves, that you just look at that as such a weak thing that you would want to help them. You know, that when I was going through basic training, there was that was my first introduction to how the military handles mental health. You know, there was a guy in my basic training class who was struggling to, you know, just adapt to the military way of life. You know, he wasn't outwardly like a shithead or anything. He was just having a really tough time being in that environment. And, you know, there's one night where I heard him, you know, kind of sobbing. You know, he wasn't my bunk mate, but he was, you know, a couple rows over. So, you know, you could hear what was going on. And I went over there, and he's sitting there with a wire coat hanger that he had, you know, sharpened the tip on, and he was trying to slit his wrist. So me and another guy grabbed him when we brought him down to the CQ desk, where, you know, they always have one drill sergeant there, or, you know, 24 hours. So we brought him down there, and this drill sergeant just started laying into him, you know, telling me he was a pussy, telling me he wished we would have just let him kill himself and all this and that. And so that was my first experience with, okay, how is the military going to handle mental health issues? So yeah, to see that happening, or to hear about that happening in the motorcycle club world, where we base everything around brotherhood, it's just kind of appalling to me to think that people have a mindset to where, oh, like, I'm going to turn my back on my brother at his weakest moment.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, I'm like kind of in the middle of the whole. Like, I kind of ebb and flow between, you know, kind of being all right and then not. You know, it was a big joke in the beginning when I first started writing for the page about 6 years ago, and how the Midnight Rider came to pass, is that some of the best stuff that I wrote was, you know, a 750 mil in, and you know, 2:00 in the morning, witching hour type shit. And I would submit articles to the page, and I would write them in a period that, you know, I wasn't really me, but I wasn't really not me. I was kind of in that like a weird Zen kind of manic, possibly with a little bit of, you know, salt and pepper manic and depressive at the same time, writing stuff. And that's kind of where my writing style came from, writing about the tenets of brotherhood, and the, you know, that nostalgic part of it, because it was something that was so, it was something that I was missing. And it wasn't because of anybody else's, you know, viewpoints towards me or actions towards me. It was the fact that for a long time, I felt like I was counterfeit to others because of the fact that I was constantly lying to myself. And how can I be a brother? How can I trust if I don't trust myself enough to talk to myself about shit that is really fucking throwing me for a fucking ringer? And, if my brother comes and asks me for advice or whatever, and I'm giving him great advice, how come I can't sometimes take, my own advice to heart? In the past few years, my physical health has now caught up to how fucked my mental health was. So it's been a process and a journey to, number one, trust me with me a little bit more and stop bullshitting myself into believing, oh no, everything's okay. And actually start addressing some of this shit. I mean, up into the point where, all right, so I turned 42 on Monday. I spent the first night, so that was the 15th. I spent day 42 plus 1 in the hospital with another mini stroke. So my stroke and heart attack count are now 2 apiece in the last like 3 years. The mental health doesn't just sit in the brain or in the heart. If it goes unchecked for a long enough period of time, it will start showing up everywhere else. The brain is a very powerful thing. A lot of my mini strokes, which they call TIAs, which is the beginning of part of a stroke. It's a blockage of blood flow that travels through the brain in different routes. This last one was scary as fuck. And they just don't end up finding a landing spot and turning into a major stroke. This last one, I was in full stroke protocol. They were fueling up the helicopter to take my ass to fucking Vegas to go and possibly get cut open. And a lot of people, I had to start coming to grips with that mental side from my traumatic brain injury from 20 some odd years ago. And I had to start peeling back those layers and letting people know what the fuck was going on, like for real, because everybody's like, oh, well, you just take better care of yourself. Just do this, just do that. And those type of things just in regular day-to-day conversation can be so difficult to hear when you're trying to start that really shitty conversation, right? Or that conversation that makes you somehow feel less of a man, or somehow feel less of a brother, or somehow feel less of a husband or a father, or that it just chips away at that, the way in which we look at ourselves in the mirror. Let's face it, military and motorcycle club is not too terribly different, right? There is a certain, kind of mold, if you will, right? These guys are dudes that are about their word. Their word is their bond. They could not have $1 million in the bank. Most of them don't, but they'll still give the shirt off their back. And, if between me and my brother, we got $10, well, we're both eating, whether I've got the 10 and he's got 0 or whatever. If, no shame, you talked about a story when you first started, when you took your first leisurely ride with the club that wasn't very leisurely because it was cold and you weren't dressed for success going through the passes up there. And you ended up gassing up a bike that was right next to yours. And you were just like, all right, and that was just one of the things. And that was probably a lesson, you just did that. You were like, fuck, I don't know how I'm gonna get home now. But, you know, and then all that stuff gets reciprocated. Well, these are dudes that, you know, typically are guys that other guys look up to, whether people want to acknowledge that or not. There's a lot of people that look up to guys that are in clubs because they understand, just even outwardly without being involved in the community, they understand the level of commitment, the level of trust, the level of dedication, the level of sacrifice, the level of all that stuff. And they think, hey man, those are dudes. Well, we kind of look at ourselves in that way too. You know, it, like, let's be honest and be real. Hey, yes, we get pumped up on our own selves because we're like, hey, we accomplished it. You know, I accomplished this. I can, if I can get through that, I can get through anything. And we start to become that feeling of invincibility. And when we start to lose a little bit of that, it starts chipping away at that shell. And it's a very easy rabbit hole to fall down and get lost in for years. And not be 100%, you know, truthful with yourself. Yes, I understand that the predominance of, you know, PTSD awareness and mental health awareness and mental stability and things like that come from the, you know, the military arena, because it's becoming a little bit more socially acceptable to have or to talk about mental health issues when it's coming from that pathway of life. The thing I loved about what Marvel did with Avengers Endgame was the fact that they put mental health front and center with Thor's character. It was finally a big, not you know, typical to Full Metal Jacket with Private Pile, where it was looked at as a negative thing. You could tell that there was a lot of things going on in that character's brain. However, with the help of the group around him, with talking, like when he went back in time, talked with his mom, and having those conversations, it by the end of the character arc of that specific movie, yes, he was, you know, he wasn't all ripped up Thor at the end of the movie, but you could start to see that there was a more mentally sound Thor that was looking towards the future rather than dwelling in the past. And things like that being in mainstream media and mainstream society will start to break down those walls, but we can't wait for shit like that. We can't sit here and act as if it's, you know, 1980, 1990, where, you know, mental health is a four letter word or indicative of fucking pussy or what the fuck ever. It has to be something that is embraced. You know, when I embrace my brother in a hug, and I fuck it, dude, I've given brothers fucking kisses on the goddamn lips, and I love pussy with the fucking best of them. And no, I've never seen a pecker up close to my fucking face. So, you know, the way that we've broken down those norms in the past, and have had those type of, where we can have those type of relationships with each other, and truly be brothers, and truly be there, and truly be part of something greater than ourselves. We can't really say that we're 100% that if we can't understand that we're not 100% that all the time. We all have moments of greatness and we have moments of weakness. And only judging us for our moments of greatness means that you don't really understand who your brother is. When you can sit there and you can prop your brother up in his moment of weakness, that to me shows more brotherhood than partying and fish fries and fucking celebrating club milestones. Let's celebrate our club milestones of getting brothers through the shit that they have to deal with in their daily lives, the shit that they have problems navigating. Road Dirt's article today about about, you know, being a 1%er, and it's not about fucking going out and busting fucking skulls and committing crimes and shit like that. It's about fucking building your brother up so that fixing that dude's credit and doing that shit so that way the motherfucker can buy a house. It's about fucking propping him up so that way he has good advancement opportunities at work. That is day in, day out life. The shit that shows up in the newspaper, just because it shows up all the time, doesn't mean it's happening 24/7. There are many more positive stories or stories that should be told than the negative shit that is publicized and fantasized about. So, you know, we have to be a little bit more honest with ourselves before we can really move forward, and attack some of these issues that are definitely lingering and are around. Just because we close our eyes to them don't mean they don't exist.
There's two things that you kind of touched on that I want to hit on again. And one of the things that you talked about was coming to terms with it. And the reason it hit me so much is because in the way that you were discussing it, you were talking about, you know, feeling as though you have everything under control. If that is your idea of what it is to be a man, like it is for me, you know, I struggle with situations where I don't have control over what's going on. I don't have control over myself. I don't have control over my emotions. And just that feeling is like emasculating to me. So it gets to a point where acknowledging that you're going through those things may feel as though you're giving up part of your identity as like a man, husband, father, brother, whatever it may be. But one of the things that's so difficult is to understand that not seeking help for those things and not seeking an avenue of improvement is prolonging that condition that you're essentially forcing yourself to live in by not seeking help. And to kind
100%.
of to kind of explain like my journey going through that, you know, I came back from Afghanistan, and you know, I dealt with things a little bit differently than before I left, and I didn't realize it at first, and I don't think that I ever would have realized it had it not been for a specific set of events. And what actually ended up happening was my ex-wife, who was my current wife at the time, had lied about all these things. I was out in the field, and she had gone to her doctor for we had just had a child, so she was going through like a 3-month checkup or something like that, and she was telling her doctor like that I was violent, that I was like breaking things around the house, that I'd like burned all the kids' toys, none of which was true. And I came out of the field, and I had 2 agencies that had to do these mental health evaluations on me, and you know, they did home visits and things like that. And like, you know, these people are looking at me like you don't seem like the violent type, and I'm like, I'm not. Like that's not how I deal with stuff. I was like, if anything, I just separate. You know, I like to get space and to kind of disconnect from how things are going on around me. I was like, I don't break stuff. I don't steal my kids' things. Like I don't do any of that. I just disconnect. Which led them to refer me to other kinds of counseling. And the first counseling thing that I went to was similar to Road Dirt's story. It was like a post adjustment counseling group. It was really just for people who had gone to a deployment, come back, and there was something wrong. So everybody in that group was kind of dealing with similar things. And like you were saying, there were malingerers there. There were people that were just making problems up. But then there were also a lot of people that, you know, were in the same boat as me, to where, you know, you put yourself in a certain mindset for so long to kind of survive the moment. And for me, being in Afghanistan and just going out on patrols every day, the thing that made me like get through all those things was just to be pissed off and angry. You know, I would just hate everybody that wasn't in the same uniform as me. And that made everything okay. And then, you know, I would get back off the road. I would come home from a mission. And I would just sit there and I would, watch a movie. I would play a video game. I would read. I would go to the gym. I would do something and just be in my own head. And I didn't realize that coming back home and coming into a family that I was doing those same things, to where I would just completely disconnect from everything. So that started me down the road to counseling and then like a positive mental health journey. But that's not to say that I didn't and still don't have struggles along the way. Which brings me to the second thing that you brought up, which is like how common all of these struggles are. And, we kind of just shy away from it and we don't like to talk about it. But when we actually start to like peel the layers of the onion back, we see that pretty much everybody struggles with stuff like this. Like I think you would be hard pressed to find one person who has never like struggled with like, maybe the world would be better off without me. Maybe it would be easier if I just ended it all. And another example that I was talking to a brother very recently who, I won't share too many details about it, but he was having a conversation with me and he was kind of just laying out like, oh, these are all the things that are going wrong. These are all the things that are going wrong. These are the reasons why they're going wrong. And, I could tell there was like a little bit more. So, I'd share a little bit about my life, a little bit about my experience. And then his story would change a little bit and he'd give me a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. And we went on about this, talking really about the same subject for about 2 hours. And then finally, it just got to a point where I was telling him, it wasn't too long ago where I was sitting in a park with a handful of pills writing a suicide note, just thinking about whether or not that was the best option for me. And I ended up getting to a point where I finished writing that note and I looked around and, thought about all the things in my life. And I called one of my brothers, and when I gave him that intimate piece of myself, it allowed him to acknowledge what he had actually been going through, what he was sitting there trying to tell me the entire time, but he didn't know if he could, which is that he was struggling with the same things, which is he was sitting there, going through the same kind of thought process, just a couple months ago where he was ready to just end it, and you get to these points in these areas in your life where you feel like maybe embarrassed about it, that it happened. But like I said, I think you would be hard pressed to find somebody who has not at least thought about it. And, everybody.
And now imagine yourself at the end of that letter, fucking going there, bearing your soul, calling up a fucking brother, and that fucking piece of shit tells you, oh, well, just fucking yank the hammer back and let it go, baby, because you're a fucking pussy.
Yeah. And I can't imagine that the people that I surround myself with would ever say that, and I think we all have those people that we would call, to be honest with you, in my situation, the person that I called, was a very close brother of mine. But then after the fact, going through all these different things, I had talked to my wife about what was going on, and to no discredit to her, she was very worried about what was happening with me. So she called another one of my brothers and said, can you just like check up on him? And then she called my dad. And like that like really pissed me off, because like now my dad knows about all this stuff and he's like worried about me, and I got another brother. And it just got to a point where I had to tell everybody, like, I need you to stop checking up on me. Like I appreciate it. I love you for caring, and I love you for reaching out to me. It's just like, I don't want to talk to everybody about this. I have a person that I'm talking to about it who I trust and like, feel comfortable talking about it with. And I'm not in that place anymore. It was like it was a moment of time in my life where I felt this way. And I got the clarity that I needed to step out of that. And I've got somebody checking up on me to make sure I'm not moving towards that again.
Exactly. And that's that trust. And unfortunately, sometimes it requires a leap of faith. And the person that talks you off that ledge could end up not being somebody that you're intimately familiar with. You know what I mean? Not somebody that you've done hella miles and miles and miles with. I had a conversation with a guy, I'm sitting at a bar, and, nobody knew what the fuck I was going through, because I was a goddamn Houdini about fucking hiding it. You said that, you kind of disconnect. I disassociate like a motherfucker. I've been disassociated for probably, aside from the love that I have for my kids and trying to be the best dad that I possibly can be, with as fucked up in my brain as I have been in the past. Fucking dude, I was autopilot. I was a robot, fucking living life. It was work, fucking take all these pills so that way I'm not in fucking pain, so that way I can fucking work, get home, try to be good dad for like 3-4 hours till they go to sleep, then fucking pass the fuck out, get up, do it all over again. And it emptied, at a young 42, my tank feels like it's fucking like a 90-year-old empty tank. And I'm just sitting at a bar fucking, and this dude picked up on something or whatever, and he just started telling me this story that fucking, I was like, dude, I really don't want to talk to you type of shit. But he was basically, I was a couple of chairs away from him. The bar's pretty fucking empty. The perfect fucking, clinical alcoholic fucking nature of drinking, right? Empty fucking bar. And you're there, and the bartender and like a couple other people. And this dude basically starts telling a story to himself that's loud enough for me to fucking hear it. And, I got what I needed out of that story. And that dude, I'd never seen that fucking guy ever again. I don't know his name, what he looked like. I remember the fucking content of that conversation. And it was pretty much, hey dog, you're not alone. Other dudes have gone through it. You look in somebody's face, they probably have dealt with something similar. Not exactly the same, but similar. Everybody's fucking combat story isn't the same, but there are similarities. Everybody's prospecting period isn't the same, but there are baseline fundamental similarities. We're going to sit here. Let's go ahead and fucking bring it into the protocol, history, and tradition aspect of it, right? Right now we're talking about culture, and that culture needs to shift. Protocol, history, tradition, shit like that. We can look at those things, and the reason that pretty much everybody fucking that is in one set of colors and they recognize somebody else in another set of colors that's in a righteous fucking club, there's going to be a baseline level of respect, because we understand that there are similarities that got us both to that level where we have achieved the recognition of being a brother and in full patch status. So
yeah, for sure.
what we can start do is shifting the culture to say being a brother ain't just about putting down miles next to each other. It's that, but it's also about putting down mental miles together.
Yeah, so that's a great segue for what I was thinking after everything that Chris just said. So I was sitting there and I'm like, okay, I'm the oldest in the room. I'm 52. And like I said, I've been sober for 25 years, and I've been working hard, pretty damn hard on my mental health for about 12 years now, since I first started getting out of the military. And I've deployed as a contractor. I still travel. I still do stuff, but I stay real close. I stay in close grips with my mental wellness, my mental health. So, I made the statement earlier, something needs to change in the community here. What do we do? And then Chris said, something needs to change. So if I was sitting here, well, I am sitting here as an individual going, what can I do? Well, so the first thing any of us can do if we're experiencing this is get help for yourself, right? I mean, you can't help anybody else if you're flat ass busted, broke, tore the fuck out the frame. You can't do anything for anybody else, your family, your kids, yourself. You can't do anything. You have to get out of that state. And there's stuff out there, there's people out there, and there's groups out there that can help you. And there's, like we said earlier, there's absolutely nothing weak about getting help and making yourself better. So here I am, decades later, I still have issues, just like Chris is saying. I mean, some days it's everything I can do just to go to work. It's everything I can do just to get on my motorcycle and go link up with my brothers. But that's a cross I bear, and I work through it and continue to try to make myself better and stronger so I can be a better person. And it's just, learn to cope every day. But I'm at a point today where there's light at the end of the tunnel. This is a pretty heavy and dark conversation we've been having for the last 40 minutes. But the light at the end of the tunnel is, there's solutions, man. There's programs out there. There's stuff out there. I've gotten help with my mental health. I've gotten help. I don't drink. I don't drug. I don't need to drink and drug. I don't want to drink and drug today. And with my mental health, I haven't suck started a 45 today, and I really don't want to suck start a 45. And when I get in one of my funks, sometimes they come harder than others, but I know how to get out of them, and I can find my way out, and I'm not afraid to make a phone call. So that being said, what I do today is I help my brothers, right? Because I'm well enough now and I can see the solutions, and I help my brothers. And this is one of the hardest things to do because, to bare your soul like we're doing right now, it takes some sack to sit here. And I challenge anybody to do it, to get on a podcast or to sit in a room full of club bros or a room full of men and bare your soul and talk about, an example of how I'm struggling and I feel weak and I'm feeling down and I'm depressed or whatever it is. But the second you do that, and it's proven, that's why they have 12-step programs, and that's why they have these groups that we've been talking about, because the second another man shares his experience, that other guy immediately has trust in him because he's like, holy crap. I mean, a doctor, you can make more progress with another man just talking about stuff like we are now than a doctor can. A doctor can't break those walls down. This is proven. A doctor can't break a lot of those walls down. It could take weeks or months, as where two men sitting down that shared a common trait or the common experience of motorcycle club. And when I say, man, my mental health is not the best and I'm struggling, all of a sudden, boom, instant trust. And now when I share my experience and how I got through it and where I'm at today, it actually is a great tool. And that's what I do a lot of today. I try, and it's humbling and it's hard. And I hate to do it sometimes because I know there's some brothers there that are like, this motherfucker over here. But you know what? At the end of the day, if 5 brothers see me as a little as a Fruit Loop or like a loose screw or something's wrong with me, I might save one brother from killing himself. And if I accomplish that in the next 20 years, I don't really give a fuck what anybody thinks about me or how anybody feels about me saying that I have mental health issues or that I'm an alcoholic and addict who had to seek help to get through it. That doesn't matter what they think, because if I can save one of my brothers or I can help a few brothers feel better, I mean, that's probably the most important thing out of all that. So, yeah, tap out.
You're 1,000% right. And that's why, it's as personal as some of these stories are. It doesn't bother me to share it on a platform like this because, I'm of the same mindset as you are, that if it helps one person feel comfortable enough to talk to me, if I can save one of my brother's lives, and it's all worth it. And anybody that looks at this and thinks like, oh, what fucking No Shame's embarrassing, he's out there fucking talking about like one of the weakest moments of his life. Well, fuck you. I don't give a shit. Hopefully you're never there. And if you are and you get to that point, hopefully you fucking remember that I embarrassed myself on a podcast, and you remember that you can fucking call me and I'm not going to judge you for it. And it goes to one of these things that I was talking to another brother last weekend about, and it goes to what you were saying. Like, a lot of times you can't help somebody that isn't ready to ask for help. You can't get past all those walls unless they see, one, that they need the help, and then 2, that you're going to be there and available to make that leap with them. So yeah, like why are we doing this podcast? I think the biggest part is to make people feel comfortable talking about it. So allow people to know that they're not alone in going through these struggles. And, one of the big things that Road Dirt said is there are resources and there are programs and there are all sorts of ways that these things can get better. And you can put the work in to help yourself get to a spot where maybe now you can look back and mentor somebody, based on your experience and your success story, or even like where you're, then that might be somebody's case. And then, where I'm at, where I'm currently battling and struggling through these things. And hopefully I can help somebody too, and helping that one person, maybe that helps me a little bit along the way.
Yeah, I know for me, you know, um, this is my own personal Mount Everest. You know, I've been up and down the Hillary step a bunch of fucking times. I haven't summited yet, and I've kind of come to the understanding that in this lifetime, I'm not gonna summit. It's not gonna happen, because for me, this is gonna be a constant struggle on the daily. This is gonna be a constant hustle. It's gonna be a constant grind, and I'm gonna get close to the peak a few times. I'm gonna slide off a few times, because this thing it's not just a one-way ticket. It's life. You never know what is going to be around the next corner. You never know what the next trigger is going to be. You never know the severity of that. And you never know if that one's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. But the understanding and the knowledge that you got to love yourself before you can truly love anybody else, and be able to really give them that kind of love. Well, that self-love is what begets the rest of it. And you kind of got to make a choice whether you want to be, and this is something that I've told my kids forever, and I'm finally starting to take my own advice. In this game of life, it's a fucking pinball machine. It's an old coin out pinball machine. You have a choice in your life to be the flippers or to be the motherfucking ball. And I've been the ball for a long fucking time that's just been bouncing off a lot of shit with no real direction. Well, it's time. It's been long past time to become the flippers and take control of the fucking game. So I go back and forth between being the flipper and being the ball, and I just try to make sure that I'm the flippers way more than I'm the fucking ball.
Well, as much as we work through things like this, like like you were saying, for a lot of people, it's a constant struggle, and I'm sure for even people that have it under control, it's like a constant struggle. Like what Road Dirt was talking about, he knows how to get out of his funks, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't get into the funks.
To begin with.
Yeah. So if you're skilled at getting out of them, that means you've probably been in them a few times. Um, but one of the things I want to kind of hit on are what are some of the struggles that you think we deal with that are specific to the MC? I mean, not specific, but prevalent more so in the MC community than are not. And for those struggles, what are some of the solutions or some of the ways that you guys have experienced, like ways to cope with it? And I want to, while we're on that subject, I want to ask kind of specifically for Road Dirt. You talk about sobriety. Is that something that's difficult for you, being in like a culture where going to bars and drinking and partying are kind of staples within the culture?
Yeah, no, not for me, because yeah, for one, I've been sober for so long now. It's just a way of life for me more than it's not. But I look at it when I see too, most of my brothers, most of the guys I'm around here. Here's what's challenging to me is a lot of guys I'm around now drink like responsible adults, and that's more dangerous for me seeing that than it is seeing the snot slinging drunk, right? That's over there drinking his woes and drinking his troubles away, because I can look over there and be like, yeah, that used to be me. You don't want to do that. And then when I see that guy have 2 beers and then set it down, I'm like, hey, maybe I could do that, right? But no, I would say for me, the drinking, it isn't really a trigger. I look at it as what it is, just a way of life. As I show up, everybody drinks. For my mental health in the motorcycle club, the biggest challenge for me is everybody is so high strung, and that maybe it's just the circles I run in, but I mean, it is just like, it seems like sometimes it's 1,000 miles an hour with no freaking thought for longevity, or it's just like a lot of high energy, whether it's people just rah-rahing or riding 1,000 miles an hour. And sometimes I have to step back from that, because it puts my mental health into a spiral, my mindset, and then I'll start getting into weird places. So I don't think the average civilian is exposed to the levels of intensity that we are in the motorcycle set, whether it be riding fast, riding hard, you know, chest thumping, rah rah bullshit or what. But that's probably one of my challenges. I see that, and I have to step back from it and put it in perspective. And I'm not. Maybe I seek out brothers who aren't quite that high strung, or separate myself from an environment that is. I don't know if that makes sense, no Shane, but that's probably my biggest challenge, or the thing I see on the set.
No, it definitely makes sense, and you know, I know what you're talking about, and I've kind of structured my club experience to be, you know, alleviant of like those struggles that I also deal with, because you know, I ended up fucking starting this chapter, and it's a very small, tight knit chapter, and it's all just people that kind of think about things the same way. But that's not to say that I also don't run in circles where people are that high energy, you know, always go kind of mentality. So it's I think a lot of it, you know, is finding those, you know, it's kind of difficult because, you know, in what I'm going to say, somebody could also look at it and be like, oh, you're talking about starting cliques, and you're talking about like, you know, you're going to destroy the brotherhood of the whole if you start making little groups. But it's, I don't know. I think it's like how you navigate it. Like I have an entire nation of brothers, you know, and then I have a region, you know, and then I have a state, and then I have my chapter. And within all those different things, like just because I'm in a chapter, it doesn't make the nation weaker, you know, just because I have a group of brothers that I can bond with on certain aspects, you know, I could talk to them about certain things. It doesn't make the whole any weaker. And you know, there's a different set of brothers that I talk to different things about, you know, and so as long as you are aware of what you're doing, you know, and conscious about, you know, who am I going to surround myself with if I personally am feeling a certain type of way. That's, to me, that's just being responsible. That's just taking ownership of your own emotions and your own, you know, mental health, and doing what you need to do to make it the best situation you can, not only for yourself, but for your brothers.
To piggyback on what you're talking about, no shame, it reminds me of an article that Silent wrote a long time ago, and he reposts on occasion, talking about a picture, right? The picture is the MC as a whole, but that picture is not clear without all the pixels being in the right place, and each pixel is different, and it just because it's different doesn't mean that it's any less important to the whole, because if any of those pixels were out of place, the picture would be fuzzy, and that puts the brotherhood at risk. So everything is good in moderation. Clicks are good in moderation, because without thinkers, you're not going to be able to have longevity and be looking, well, where does the club see itself 5-10 years down the road? Without the thumpers, you're not going to have those dudes that are 100% always down to just to get down and protect, right? Without your leaders, you won't have any direction. Without your soldiers, you don't have any follow through in that direction. You know, everybody within a brotherhood has everybody within a family, right? Let's call it what it is, because it's not just a brotherhood, right? It's a family, because each one of those brothers has an old lady or has kids or has whatever. So it's not fair to say that it's just a brotherhood, because the folks that brother goes home to are just as important to as the folks that the dude's riding with. So so you know, I would challenge anybody that would immediately think that having, you know, a close set that you bounce things off of, or having a chapter like that could somehow destroy the whole. I would challenge them to really open their mind a little bit more and think on a higher level. Not saying that it, not higher as in you know, upper level thinking, but expanding the viewpoint rather than just looking down the barrel of a gun, actually looking at the whole sight picture, and looking at at the whole for what it is. To answer the question about the triggers, I have two. I have two struggles. One of them has a lot to do with what you guys are talking about with the high energy, and I have my own way of explaining that one. That's like the emotionally charged decisions. Um, you know, especially being in a leadership role, it's made me really understand a little bit more about how dangerous emotionally charged decisions are. So I've become better at not being that emotionally charged dude. But there have been a few occasions where, um, you know, some emotionally charged uh, situations have happened, and and then the group think starts where you got one dude that's just ready to just go balls to the fucking wall, and everybody else gets hyped up on that shit, and then typically bad decisions get made. And then the other one that I have is motivation. It's really difficult sometimes for me. I always want to be out there with everybody and stuff like that. Um, you know, I always want to go on rides. I prefer to, I own two motorcycles, and I own a truck that is for my business that I use to tow a motorcycle around. That truck costs about $1.5 million to fill up right now because gas is through the fucking roof. So, and I prefer to be on my bike. But with that being said, there's some times where, I'll be talking to the guys at 6, 7 o'clock at night, the night before a ride, and I've pooped dick out because I had no motivation whatsoever. I wanted to be on the ride. My brain wanted to be there, but for whatever reason, like it was one of those days where I was in a funk and in a stupor. And because of the fact that I've been open with my brothers about that, when it's a really important deal, they'll decide that no, hey, they're just going to meet up at my house. So they brought my motivation to me in the form of their physical presence. So instead of meeting at the gas
That's what's
station,
up,
which is
man. That's what it's all about right there. I know I'm interrupting you, but
no,
them coming to
that's
you,
exactly what it
that's
is.
what it's all about. That's all.
Yeah, it's inconvenient for them. So now they got to ride to my house, so that way we can go ahead and ride from my house to the gas station, get gassed up, and then be on our way. But they don't mind the inconvenience, knowing that they got me on either their right or their left in the fucking pack. And that right there is one of those little steps, right? Like that Road Dirt's talking about, that No Shame's talking about, where you don't necessarily have to go to meetings. You don't necessarily have to. Some of that stuff doesn't work for everybody, but a meeting doesn't need to be a structured thing. A meeting can be a 30-minute conversation between yourself and a trusted brother. A meeting can be a small conversation of, hey man, I'm struggling with this. A meeting can be not the dude that's struggling. It's also allowed for us to fucking pay attention and give a fuck about the people that we choose to associate with. I can sit there and be like, hey man, my dog doesn't look like my dog right now. How do I go about asking my dog what the fuck's going on? How do I ask this brother about shit? Well, you start a stupid conversation. You be a conversationalist. Fucking crack a joke. Fucking whatever. Start breaking down that barrier enough to where you can be like, all right, dude, I got my opening. Hey man, how's everything going at work? How's the bike running? How's eventually you'll get down to that conversation that needs to be had. If there's any brotherhood between two dudes, if there's brotherhood between two dudes, there is a way to have these conversations. It just takes a little bit of extra effort, takes a little bit of extra care, takes a little bit of extra understanding that, yeah, hey, we could be hoisting up beers and shit like that, but it's also important to be, taking a look at everybody and making sure that, everybody's good. That's part of brotherhood too.
Hey, I got a question. How many of y'all have done this? Now, this is one thing I found to be true. Years ago, one of my very close mentors and friends told me about depression. He said, just move, right? That was it, just move. How many times have you been like, because I'll just come in the house and just sit or lay on the bed and just fucking play the phone game or whatever and just ignore everybody and just isolate. And I don't want to see my brothers. I don't want to ride my motorcycle. But the second I get there and start talking to them, I have a fucking blast. How many of y'all have experienced that?
So it's crazy that you asked that question, because I was just about to go into this, and I was going to go into a story, but the way you framed it, I think it makes what I'm about to say even better. Because everybody hates mandatories, right? But
Yeah.
we have like this, and it's stupid because we have in where I'm at, there's like one mandatory event that we go to every month. And I just happened to go to this mandatory event while I was like in the middle of dealing with my shit, the situation that I was talking about earlier. And I get there and it's like, I'm pissed. I don't want to be there. I really wanted to just fight somebody. I was hoping and praying, like, I hope somebody comes to this event, from another club and is just acting a fucking fool and talking shit or even just looking stupid so I can beat the fuck out of them and it'll make me feel so much better. And that's just how I felt. And my brothers are looking at me like something is wrong, and I feel so blessed in the club that I'm in, and the chapter that I'm in, and just all of it. I feel blessed that I have this. I feel blessed that I'm with Four for the Road, and there's all the things that this life has given me, because I had so many brothers pull me aside like, hey, what's going on? And I don't really share a lot of my like personal like life with a lot of people. But to have people come and pull me aside and say, like, look, it doesn't look like everything's going cool with you, like, whatever. I had one brother say, like, hey, you've been ducking my phone calls. I told him, I was like, yeah, I've been doing it on purpose because I know you're going to tell me something that's going to make sense. And I just don't want anything that makes sense right now. I want everything to suck. And, that brother happens to own a barbershop, and he says, come by, I'll give you a free haircut. And it was like the next week I was in his shop, like bearing my fucking soul in the barber chair, and like all those little things helped me, and I had brothers that saw me, and they ended up calling me later on and checking up on me, just saying, hey, what's up, want to make sure you're good. But just the ability to be out there, even though my night started off with me wanting to find somebody to beat the shit out of, just seeing all those brothers that honestly cared. They knew something was going wrong with me, and then they cared enough to ask and to extend the an invitation to call or to come over or whatever. It lightened my mood, and just being out moving around with my brothers, it put me in a good mood. And I know for a fact I did not want to be there because I wanted to feel like shit. But sometimes you put yourself in an environment, and this is on all of us and everybody listening and everybody that's going through this, to create a culture and create an environment where somebody else going through the same bullshit has the opportunity to come there and have a good time with their brothers, forget about the bullshit they're going through, and to be able to get themselves out of that funk with your help. And sometimes it requires you to force them to come out. Sometimes it requires your brothers to ride an hour out of their way just to come to your house and pick you up to go on that ride that you were supposed to go on. It's us holding each other as men accountable for what we're going to do, and in noticing and taking the time to be involved in each other's lives enough to save each other's lives.
Yep. The only time you'll see me looking down on a brother is when I'm reaching my hand down to pick him up.
And that's how it should be for everybody. And I think if we can get that point across, I think we've accomplished the goal of this podcast. We are at a little over an hour here. Anybody want to say anything in closing?
I appreciate the level of trust that you guys have with our platform. I appreciate the level of trust that I have with our platform to put something out like this. And the fact that you guys are out here, talking about your situations and your experiences and sharing them with people that, we're probably never going to ever meet. This is the type of shit that will start changing and making some good changes into what acceptable norms are and aren't. And like, honestly, I feel blessed to be a part of this group of this extraordinary group of freaking gentlemen that we have here at Four for the Road. And I don't have anything but awesome shit to say about each and every one of you.
Yeah, I'm just going to stand here with my arms crossed and go, yeah, what he said.
Perfect.
Sounds good, guys. Hey, I appreciate both of you coming on here and being able to bare your souls and kind of give people an intimate look into what you guys go through. I just want to let everybody listening know that there's somebody to talk to. Pick up the phone, call somebody you trust, call somebody you love. Call a 1-800 number. Be prepared though that they are going to put you on hold, which seems weird to me, but it happens. Send a fucking message to the page, like whatever it is. There are people that want to help you. There are people that want to see you there, tomorrow, a week from now, a month from now, a year from now. Let's fucking make the community the best we can possibly make it, and just really look out for your brothers, look out for their families, and take care of each other like you all promised you would when you put that prospect patch on, or when you got on the bike and decided you were going to ride next to somebody. You made a promise that you were going to take their life as seriously as you took your own. So do that for each other. And until next time, y'all fucking keep the rubber side down, shiny side up, and see you guys on the next episode.